Welcome to the first of a series of lectures by outstanding scholars from around the world. Today we have the honor of my name is Emanuel Pastreich. I'm a professor here at Kyung University, and I'm a professor in the College of International Studies. We have with us this evening a distinguished scholar from Yale University, Professor John Treat, who is an expert in Japanese literature and culture, but who has also taken a great interest in Korean literature and culture as well. This is the first of a series of lectures, but in this first lecture, we will talk a bit about the academic environment at Yale University, what it's like for undergraduate students, the whole process of studying and getting one's degree. And I think that Professor Tree can give us some real insights into what is possible in schools, what it's like to study in one of these elite universities, and also some hints about what is possible for us to do here in Korea. I also want to just as a footnote mention that I myself was an undergraduate at Yale University in the same department, East Asian Languages and Literatures. So after Professor Treat's lecture, we'll have a chance to do a short sort of question and answer session, and I would be happy, if you're interested, to talk a little bit of the experiences. Granted, it's in ancient history when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, but what it was like to be an undergraduate at Yale as well. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you Professor John Treat of the Department of East Asian Languages and Literature at Yale University. Thank you, Professor Treat.
Very, very happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Professor Pastreich. Professor Pastreich is, as he mentioned to you, a graduate of Yale College, the undergraduate unit at Yale University. I earned my graduate degrees at Yale. I graduated in 1982. Professor Pastreich left us, betrayed us, and went off to Harvard University, but between the two of us, I think we can tell you a lot about Ivy League education in the United States. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. So this is the seal of Yale University. As you can see, our motto is in Latin, Lux et Veritas, light and truth. And the colors here are blue and white, which are the university's colors. I'm having trouble. Okay. No, let's go to the next slide. Okay. Here's graduation at Yale. This happens to be, oh yes, the School of Forestry. There are 14 units at Yale University. Yale College is just one of the 14 units. There's a School of Forestry. And as you can see, the graduates of the School of Forestry like to put trees and plants on their hats when they graduate. So as I mentioned, Yale University has 14 schools and colleges, including Yale College, which Professor Pastreich is a graduate of. Yale College was founded in 1701, so it's over 300 years old. It was founded before the United States existed. It was a crown colony with a permit from the King of England. Now we have approximately 5,400 undergraduate students. That's roughly the size of an undergraduate population that every Ivy League college has, Princeton, Columbia, Harvard. And all of us are beginning to expand it slightly. Yale is going to increase the number of students another 500 in the next few years. 57% of our students, more than half, are on some form of financial aid. In other words, they don't pay the full amount of tuition and room and board. The amount varies. We call our policy need blind, in that we admit you without knowing if you need money or not. Once we admit students to Yale, then we look to see whether their families need some financial assistance. You may have more questions about that for me later. I don't have it up here, but more than half of the students at Yale come from public high schools. Less than half the student body comes from private high schools. Most people don't know that. They think most of our students went to elite preparatory schools, but that is not true. 18% of our student body is made up of international students. South Korea sends us the third largest group of international students. Canada sends the largest, and China sends the second. When I was a college student in the 1970s, there were almost no international students at American colleges and universities. A couple of people from Canada, maybe. That has changed very, very much. So 18%, almost a fifth of our student body comes from abroad. There are 80 majors in Yale College. You have a choice of 80 things to major in. And many Yale undergraduates double major. They major in two things. They major in music and biology, computer science and history of art. Some people even try and major in three things, but we discourage that. But it's very, very common for students to major in two. Nowadays, the most popular majors at Yale, economics is number one, political science is number two, history is number three, psychology is number four. 10 years ago, it wasn't that way. History was the largest major at Yale University, and English was the second largest major at Yale. English is now not even on the list. Here's a view of campus from the air. This is Harkness Tower. There are bells in there that are played every afternoon. That is our rare book library, the Beinecke Book Library. I think it's the most beautiful campus, a building on campus. This is Sterling Library, our major library at Yale. This is the center of campus. The campus is quite large. But if you are an undergraduate at Yale, this is the part of campus that you spend your most time on. I have another photograph for you. This is the interior of the music library. This is relatively new. It's a very beautiful space, and it's where our scores and textural materials, not musical instruments, but textual materials in the history of music, the theory of music, are kept. The educational philosophy. I was asked to talk to you today about our educational philosophy. So I want to spend some time on this slide with you. I'm going to read this sentence by sentence and explain it. And this is a quote from Yale. This is the official statement of our educational philosophy. Yale College offers a liberal arts education, one that aims to cultivate a broadly informed, highly disciplined intellect without specifying in advance how that intellect will be used. I think that is a great way of putting it. We want to teach you how to think. We teach you a lot of facts. I mean, if you study physics, you learn a lot of facts. If you study Swahili, you learn a lot of facts. But we're interested in broadly training you to be able to solve problems that we can't anticipate. Yale often uses the word critical thinking. We wish to teach you critical thinking. I don't quite know what critical thinking means, except that to me, it means hard thinking. All right, thinking hard about things. When Yale says that we want a highly disciplined intellect without specifying in advance how that intellect will be used, what that means is we are not a trade school. We are not training you for a specific job. We don't know what your job will be when you graduate. Many of our students go on to become lawyers, they become doctors, they become engineers, they become painters, actors, but that professional training comes after Yale. You have to go to law school. You have to go to medical school. You have to get an advanced engineering degree. We are not a trade school. The most popular major in American higher education, by far, nationwide, is business. Business. We do not have a business major. And sometimes we have applicants that say, well, I want to major in business at Yale. They haven't read the website very carefully because we don't have a business major. The second most popular undergraduate major in the United States is communications. Now, again, I'm not really sure what that is. But we do not have a communications major. We do not have a school of communications. What do we have? We have many departments organized around disciplines, like economics, like political science, like history, like psychology. This is what a liberal arts education means. It means that you don't know from the day you arrive on campus what you're being trained for. We encourage you to experiment. We encourage you to study things you've never thought of studying before. Isn't that right? Okay. Tell us the strangest thing you studied when you were at Yale.
Strangest thing I studied at Yale?
Yes.
Well, that's a hard question, actually.
You didn't take anything strange?
Strange. I took a class in quantum physics for liberal arts students, and that with Rig Hughes. So that was, I was a literature major, but I learned basic vector theory, and they tried to learn about quantum mechanics.
Professor Pastrick was a very serious student, I can tell you. I took improvisational dance. All right? Yeah, okay. But I was encouraged to experiment, as all Yale students are. All right, let's continue. Such an approach to learning regards college as a phase of exploration, a place for the exercise of curiosity, and an opportunity for the discovery of new interests and abilities. What I like about this sentence is the phrase, college is a phase of exploration. College is a stage in your life. It doesn't come early and it doesn't come late. It comes when you're a young adult, and you are there to explore. We want you to use your curiosity. We want you to discover new interests. When I entered college, I was not going to study Japanese literature. That was the furthest thing from my mind. I was going to be a philosophy major. But over the course of 4 years, I evolved and I changed and I pursued my curiosity. And here I am today. The college does not seek primarily to train students in the particulars. Where do we go? Particulars of a given career, although some students may elect to receive more of that preparation than others. So as I said, we're not a trade school. We're not teaching you how to build airplanes, all right? But if you're an engineering major, you may very well learn things that will be useful to you in designing airplanes. If you're studying biology with the intent of becoming a doctor, clearly biology provides you with a good background in what you'll need to know as a doctor. But you know, we have many people that major in French language, French literature, and then they go on to become doctors or they become lawyers. There's not the immediate connection between what you do in a liberal arts environment and what you choose to do as a profession later on in life. Some of our students join the military when they graduate, all right? I mean, there are multiple career paths. Instead, its main goal is to instill knowledge and skills that students can bring to bear in whatever work they eventually choose. So we're not asking you when you're 18 years old to choose. We're preparing you to make that choice. This philosophy of education corresponds with that expressed in the Yale Report of 1828. This has been our educational philosophy for close to 200 years, and it's not going to change, which draws a distinction between expanding the mind's powers and storing it with knowledge. Draws a distinction between expanding the mind's powers and storing it with knowledge. Yes, we do teach you knowledge. All right. If you decide to major in economics, all right, you will learn about theorems. You will learn about the history of economics. You'll read Smith. You'll read Marx. You'll get a lot of information, but what we're also interested in is expanding your mind's powers through critical thinking. The things we learn now in 2013 may not be the things we need to solve problems in 2023, and we want to prepare you to meet those challenges head on. Acquiring facts is important, but learning how to think critically and creatively in a variety of ways takes precedent. If you leave this lecture hall tonight with one thing you've learned about Yale University, this is probably it. Acquiring facts in a Yale education is important, but learning how to think hard, that's my word for critically, and creatively, that's a very important word, in a variety of ways takes precedence in a liberal arts education. That's true whether you go to Harvard, Princeton, Cornell, Penn. We're all liberal arts institutions. This is a new building on campus. This is the Student Health Center. It's a small hospital. Yale has a very large hospital as well, but this is if you have a cold or something very, very minor, you go there to see a doctor. This is the interior of the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, which I showed you a partial picture of before. I think it's the most beautiful building on campus. Those are stacks with rare books in them. And if there were a fire inside this library, this whole collection of books moves underground and is covered with foam to prevent. We have a Gutenberg Bible. I mean, we have many things that are irreplaceable. It's one of the great resources at Yale, in my opinion. The Korean National Library, the National Assembly Library here in Seoul, for a number of years now, has been sending a team here to digitalize all the Korea-related materials that we have in the library. I've given you our website. It's not hard to remember, yale.edu. And here are some more facts. 31% of our students major in the humanities. The humanities at Yale includes history. At some universities, history is classified as a social science. But if you take the history of art, the national literature departments, English, classics, history, that accounts for a third, almost a third, of our undergraduate majors. 39% of our students major in the social sciences. So psychology would be the biggest of those, but anthropology, sociology, so on and so forth. That accounts for 39, almost 40%, 2 out of 5 students. 23% major in the biological and physical sciences. Okay. And 7% major in FAS. FAS is an acronym for the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. And I'm not sure what that means, except that some students design their own major. Some students have an individualized major, and I think that's called an FAS major, or in professional school programs. We don't encourage that, but some students, they get an undergraduate degree, which at Yale is either a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, or a Bachelor of Science, a BS, but they sometimes also earn a degree in the School of Drama or the School of Architecture. And so that's why that is up there. But this is a very small number of our students. This is less than 10%. The arts are particularly strong. I think Professor Pastrick will confirm that, compared to Harvard, music, theater, and art are very important at Yale. And that's one of the wonderful things about Yale, is all of the theater and musical performances and galleries, art exhibits, pre-modern and modern. And it's one of the things that attracts people to Yale, is our strong arts program. Oops. Many of our students, but not all, go on to graduate school. It's not a requirement, but President Bush, the younger President Bush, he graduated from Yale, and he went to Harvard Business School. He went and got an MBA. President Clinton got a degree from Yale Law School, as did the next president of the United States, Hillary Clinton. And I would think that probably over 50% of our graduates go on to graduate school. I'm not sure of that, but that's my impression. This is a picture of one of the residential colleges at Yale. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The style of the campus is neo-Gothic, modeled after Oxbridge and Cambridge, but on a much smaller scale. And these buildings were built in the 1930s in the United States, during the Great Depression, when one could afford to do that kind of thing, largely by local Italians, masons, carpenters, and so on. So it's given us a very beautiful campus. This is the interior of one of the Yale Art Galleries. They have recently been expanded, but this is one of the older ones. And we can see some classic Latin and Greek works of art here. The curriculum. I want to talk about 4 things. We require every student to do a variety of work. There are requirements. You have to do something in quantitative reasoning, and that basically means the sciences. You have to do some work in the sciences. Professor Pastrick took quantum physics for liberal arts majors. Okay, that was the easy way to do it. There's a hard way to do it. You can choose what you want to do. You have to take a writing course. Our students come to Yale relatively skilled in writing, but that's not to say more progress can't be made. So they usually, in the English department, take an advanced composition course. There's a language requirement at Yale. Even people that have done a lot of foreign language training in secondary school are required to do a little more. The foreign language requirement has been reduced in recent years. It's not as onerous as it used to be, but we still do require it, and we teach a lot of languages. I put them up here for you. You'll see Korean is there. In our Korean language program, we have about 50 undergraduates taking Korean at Yale. Some languages, of course, like Spanish, will have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students. And others like Izizulu will have relatively few. But as you can see, we cover the globe. And then it's also true that in recent years, we have been encouraging students to either study or work abroad. Yale has been changing from being a largely American university to being an international university. And we want our native-born students, our American students, to have some experience outside the continental United States. Not necessarily during the school year, but maybe during the summer months. We have internship programs in London and Tokyo for students to intern with companies. Some of our students get money to study abroad after they graduate. They've graduated, and Yale gives them money to spend an additional 6 months, 12 months abroad. There are many different ways to do this, and it's something we now encourage, which we did not used to encourage. Right now, for instance, in Seoul, we have 13 undergraduates in intensive Korean programs. We pay for that. We give the students money to come here to Seoul and do a 2 or 3 month intensive program in Korean. We have 13 students. In China, we have many, many more. Okay. This is a drama. This is a theatrical. This is not the law school. Okay. This is a play, and my guess it's Moliere, but I may be wrong about that. There are a lot of theatrical productions at Yale, amateur, semi-professional, and professional. Here's an old picture for you. You know, until 1970, I think it was, Yale was all male. Yale College was only men. After 1970, we began to admit women, and now it's roughly 50-50. I think the women have a slight edge. Women may be 51 or 52% of the student body. But I think this is the rowing team from years gone. Yeah, it must be the rowing team, because this guy is small, so he's probably the bosun who sat at the front of the boat. Yale invented football, by the way. The American game of football, which is our national sport, was invented at Yale. Harvard usually beats us now, but we invented it. Okay, more on the curriculum, because I think that's what you want to know. We have these distributional requirements: quantitative learning, writing, foreign language. When you choose a major, and you usually choose your major in your second year at Yale, some people declare it earlier, some people declare it later. You have an advisor. You probably have several advisors while you're at Yale. And you make a decision with your advisors, usually in your second year, usually in the beginning of your second year. And whatever major you have has its own requirements. If you major in East Asian languages, my department, you have to take 8 courses. And you have a choice, some choice of what courses to take. There's some room to choose, but we highly recommend certain courses to our students. We expect students to graduate in 8 terms. That's 4 years. We don't like students taking 5 years, 6 years to graduate. At many universities in the United States, particularly state schools, people drop out, they come back, they drop out, they come back. They can take many years to earn their degree. All universities in the United States are tightening up on that because we need to open up new seats for new students. But Yale is very strict. We like people in and out in 4 years, which means almost all of our students are between the ages of 18 and 22 years old. If you go to Berkeley, the University of California, Berkeley, there'll be students in their 30s, 40s. There'll be students who have come back to school. You have people of many different ages. At Yale, with some exceptions, almost everybody in Yale College is between the ages of 18 and 22. Earlier I said there were 80 majors. When I prepared this slideshow for you, I was under the impression there were 170. I think what I was thinking of is that there are combined majors, economics and biology. And if you look at all the permutations of the possibilities, we have 170. Some people do combined BA and MA degrees. In other words, they're not at Yale for 4 years. They're at Yale for 5 years. And they graduate with 2 degrees. They graduate with a BA, and they graduate with a master's degree, a graduate degree. There are some students, for instance, in my department, that graduate with a BA in East Asian languages and literatures, but also with an MA in in East Asian languages and literatures. And that takes students 5 years to do. We have a lot of directed readings and tutorials. In other words, a lot of students want to study something that we don't have a course in. And if your department agrees, we arrange a one-on-one tutorial with a faculty member. You meet with that faculty member on a regular basis, typically once a week. And it counts for full credit. I do a couple of these every year in addition to my usual teaching load. There's not always champagne in the classroom, but there's champagne here today, and I think this must be the last day of class or something, and the class is celebrating. And as you can see, this guy must be the teacher because he's not between 18 and 22 years old, but everyone else is. And that's a good representative picture of what our student body is up to, although perhaps it's a little less racially diverse than the typical Yale classroom is. Learning resources at Yale. Our libraries have a total of 15 million volumes. You will not read all of them. That's a large collection. The University of Illinois, in the state of Illinois, has the largest library in the United States, but Yale is among the biggest. And if we don't have the book that you want, we borrow it from Harvard, we borrow it from Columbia, and they put it in a truck and it comes out. So, basically there is no problem in access for anything you might want to read. We subscribe to almost 500,000 periodicals. Almost 500,000 periodicals. We have an immensely respected art gallery. We say art gallery, but it's really a museum. And it's large, and all of our museums are free. We have the largest number of free museums in New Haven than any place in the United States except Washington, D.C., where the Smithsonian museums are also open and free to the public. We are the second largest. The Yale Center for British Art. Yale has the largest collection of British art outside of Britain. And it's a special jewel in our crown, as we might say. We're very proud of that. We have the Peabody Museum of Natural History. You can go look at huge dinosaurs, okay? Dinosaur bones that have been reconstructed. And I added the collection of musical instruments. Lots of undergraduates never go and see it. But it's immense. It's large. It's not open every day. It's open a few days a week. And there are musical instruments from all over the world. So these are examples of things that we have in addition to the classroom, in addition to the faculty. I can't remember if I tell you how many faculty we have. Yale has, as I told you, about 5,400 undergraduates. Technically, we have 4,000 faculty. So we have almost as many faculty as we have undergraduate students. However, half of those faculty are in the medical school, and you will never see them. Basically, the professors that do the teaching in Yale College, that's about 750 faculty, about 800 faculty. In Yale College, the overall teacher-student ratio is 6 to 1. For every 6 students, there is 1 professor. At Harvard, it's 8 to 1. In science, technology, engineering, and math, the teaching ratio is 3 students for every faculty member. And in the School of Engineering, it's 1 to 1. In other words, for every major, there is 1 faculty member. This is one of the gates at Yale. I forget the name of this one. Maybe it's Porter Gate. I can't recall. But we're looking towards Commons, which is a very large building. It has a concert hall in it. It has a dining hall in it. Yale has many of these gates. This is not neo-Gothic like what I was showing you before. This is Georgian style, which is the other predominant architectural style on campus. So what makes Yale really special and different is the residential colleges. We have 10 of them. Which one were you in, Emmanuel? You were in Davenport, okay. There are 2 new ones under construction. As I told you, we're increasing the size of our student body by 500 students. So we need 2 more residential colleges. So there will be 12 of them. It was started 70 years ago. So it's not as old as Yale University, but it's really at the heart of Yale College now. It's buildings around a courtyard, maybe 2 courtyards. Students live together. And each college has a master. Each college has a distinguished faculty member who lives with the students, with his or her spouse and children, and will give master's teas where people come and give informal talks. The master will give parties. The master is the leader of the, some of the masters are women, some of the masters are men. One of the colleges has a Korean now is a master. He is a professor of psychology. He and his wife, who is also Korean, live there. And there's a dean. There is a younger person, not as distinguished in his or her career, who handles the everyday problems that students have, registering for courses, emergency leaves, so on and so forth, medical problems. Each college has its own dining hall, and each college has its own recreational facilities, and they're not all the same. One college will have squash courts. Another college will have a theater. Another college will have a restaurant. I mean, they have all different sorts of things. Not all, but most undergraduates, though, spend their first year together on the old campus. Before you're assigned to a college, when you're admitted to Yale, soon thereafter you're assigned to a college. You were in Davenport because your dad was in Davenport. Okay, those days are over. Okay, you don't automatically do what your dad did, but you are assigned to one, and your first year, because Yale wants you to get to know your class. They want you to get to know all the freshmen, not just the ones in your college. You live on the old campus. I lived on the old campus for 2 years, 1977 to 79. I was a dorm advisor. I was the older guy that lived in the dorm to help freshmen with what other problems they might have. So I lived on the old campus myself when I was a graduate student. And 90% of all undergraduate students live on campus for their full 4 years. In a number of schools, students frequently move off campus. You know, they want an apartment. But that's not the Yale style. Most of our students come and live on campus, and they stay on campus for their 4 years. The residential colleges are very unique, and people become very loyal. You know, they don't say, I'm a Yale man. They don't say, I'm a Yale woman. They say, I'm a Davenport man, or I'm a Saybrook girl, or people become very loyal to them. And Harvard has houses. Okay, Rice University in Houston has a residential college system. Princeton is starting a residential college system, but they're more just like dorms. They don't quite have the unique identity that Yale's undergraduate residential colleges have. This is Woolsey Hall. I think it's the largest assembly place on campus. Convocation, when you enter as a freshman, there's a convocation ceremony. The president of Yale, the provost of Yale, and the dean of Yale College give you a speech, and they do it in that. The graduate school, when they award their PhDs at commencement every year, they do it in this hall. It's a beautiful building. It's where the New Haven Symphony Orchestra performs. It's our largest space on campus. Student life. We have 35 intercollegiate sports. By intercollegiate, I mean sports that play other colleges and universities. Okay, 16 of them are for men, 18 of them are for women, and one of them, sailing, is co-ed. We have scores of intramural sports. By intramural, I mean these are teams that don't play other colleges, but they play other Yale teams. So Davenport College, Professor Pastrick could have been on the Davenport College hockey team. All right, he could have been. I don't think he was, but and he would play hockey against Silliman College or Morse College. Okay, and you don't have to be very good. Okay, I mean, I played hockey and I can't skate. Okay, I mean, I was the goalie because you don't have to move around very much. It's fun. It's just fun. We have dramatics. We particularly have a lot of singing groups. The Whiffenpoofs are the most famous. They're all male. There are all female equivalents, but Yale is particularly noted for its singing groups, performing groups, orchestras, jazz quartets, social service organizations. A lot of our students volunteer to work in the community. They tutor younger kids who are at risk. They coach junior high school kids in basketball. You know, they do that kind of social service. There are religious activities. Yale has a center for Jewish students. It has a center for Catholic students. It has a university chaplain, and it has chaplains for many of the major religions, including Buddhism. We have a Buddhist chaplain. I think we're between Buddhist chaplains right now, but there's a lot. If you are a religious person, there are many opportunities. And generally what we find is that the students who come to Yale who are Catholic or Jewish tend to join in the Catholic activities or the Jewish activities. But like I say, we have beautiful buildings for them. Outside donors have given money, so we have that. And given Yale's location in the northeast of the United States, New Haven, Connecticut, there are opportunities for off-campus activities, not just in New Haven, which is not small. Greater New Haven is the same size as Greater New Orleans. All right, people think of New Orleans as a big city. Well, it used to be bigger than it is now, but New Orleans and New Haven are about the same size. But trains connect New Haven to New York, the largest city in the United States, and Boston, where there are millions of college students. And so it's easy to get out of town. You know, Cornell is a great university. It's one of the great universities. But Ithaca is not near anything. All right. Yale benefits by being in what we call the Northeast Corridor. Amtrak, the national train, connects Boston to Washington, D.C., and it stops in New Haven. One of our singing groups, all-female group, obviously. I can't remember their name, but it's an example of the extracurricular activities we have available. This is the lounge inside one of our new buildings. It belongs to the School of Forestry, and it's entirely green. The building's entirely green. It doesn't use energy to heat or cool. It just uses the sun. And I think it's a beautiful building, so I just wanted to show you a picture of it. Cultural centers. Yale is a diverse place. It's not all male. It's not all white. It's not all Christian. And we have facilities on campus for some of the diverse groups. We have an Afro-American Cultural Center. We have an Asian American Cultural Center. We have La Casa Cultural, which is for Spanish-speaking, Hispanic, Latin American, South American students. We have a Native American Cultural Center. We have a Women's Center. And they don't have their own building, but there are 12 LGBT organizations on campus. That's lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. And altogether, there are 477 registered undergraduate organizations, which you might call clubs. Okay, there are almost 500 different clubs that you can join. The Debating Society, college Republicans, college Democrats, vegetarians. Everyone has their own club. This is Yale Bowl, where we play football. And we try and beat Harvard every year. We usually do not succeed. And I guess that's the end of my presentation. So we've got, 10 minutes or so for some questions, if you'd like to ask me. And I might ask Professor Pastrick to join in and help me answer some of them. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Professor Tree. And I think we have a few questions here already which have been presented. So maybe we'll start with those. And if we have time, these are all from the audience. If we have time after that, we can take a few additional questions as well. So question number one, let's assume this refers to students. When do you, say at Yale, feel the joy of learning most?
Well, when do students feel the joy of learning most? Emmanuel, for you, what was it?
That was
you don't want to say? It's too,
that was tricky.
It's too embarrassing.
No, I will tell you. So one of the unique aspects of Yale as undergraduate is that in the residential colleges, they have faculty affiliated. So, for example, people like Paul Kennedy, who's a famous professor of history, is an affiliate of Davenport College. And when I was an undergraduate, and Professor Tobin, who was professor of economics and Nobel Prize winner, was an affiliate of Davenport College. So as an undergraduate, I would have these chances to sit down sometimes for lunch with a very distinguished scholar. And that ability to take what I learned in class and actually have a chance to speak to someone like that was one of the great pleasures there.
That's a better answer than I have. That's a very good one, and it points to the fact that at Yale, the professors are not only many, they are available. We're encouraged to eat lunch with the students, and we often do. We go into the dining halls. At larger universities, which can be wonderful universities, so much of the teaching is done by graduate students. At Yale, most of the teaching is done by professors. I would say I interpreted the question a little differently. Studied foreign languages in college, and whether it was Japanese or Korean or Vietnamese, the day that I was able to make a pun in a foreign language always gave me the most joy. I felt like I had really made progress when I could do that. I can't answer this question. It's going to be different for everyone. Why don't you go on to the next?
So second question, Korean students are busy studying and preparing for their careers. What do you think about this situation in Korean education, and how would you compare Korean students with students, say, in the United States or at Yale specifically?
Well, students everywhere, not just in Korea, but everywhere, are more and more concerned about their careers because of the recession that hit so much of the world in 2008. So students do sort of worry more about employment than they used to. So I don't know if there's quite the difference between American students and Korean students that there once was. But I'll tell you this: we do encourage you to slow down. We encourage you to experiment, to indulge your curiosity, because an 18-year-old is in some ways only half an adult. An 18-year-old is still a child in some ways. And our feeling is that it may be a little too early for you to know what career you want to follow. So we don't encourage students to be pre-professional early on in their careers. That's just the sort of school we are, and if you want to specialize from the very beginning, there are many other schools you can go to, but Yale is not one of them. Okay.
Thank you. So, next question. In Korea, many students in middle school, high school, are quite tired with this process of preparing for entrance examinations. And I've heard that parents and students in the United States, although the students study very hard and get ready for Ivy League schools, but there are some differences. Could you talk about maybe some of this, what the similarities are in terms of competitiveness and preparing to go to school, college, and the differences?
Well, you have to take a test to get into Yale. You have to take what is called the Scholastic Aptitude Test, or the SAT. It's given around the world. It's given here in Korea. And a certain score is not required on that test. It's only one of many factors that the Yale Office of Admission takes into account in admitting a well-rounded freshman class. However, I can tell you that the average SAT score on the verbal section, reading, writing, general knowledge, is between 700 and 800. Out of what? Out of a total of 1,000 or 1,200. It's changed over time. But I don't want you to think that we admit on the basis of scores. We admit on the basis of many things. We admit on the basis of your interests, recommendations from high school teachers you've had, what it is you're interested in studying. We don't want everyone to be a theater major. We don't want 5,400 theater majors. We're looking for people with different abilities. We're looking for people that some of them will be athletes. Some of them will be very good at hockey or baseball. There's not one model for this, and certainly not one test scores. Professor Pastrick and I were talking before this evening, and our test scores were okay. All right, they weren't great, and he got into Yale. All right, so it's not the make or break examination system that it is in a number of other countries, including Korea. I'm not saying the American system is better, and I'm not saying it's worse. That's just the way it is. Okay.
Thank you. Third question. Fourth question, I guess. In South Korea, many students study exclusively for the tests, stating that their study is in order to go to a prestigious school in Korea. It's not their fault that they have to do this. In fact, as a teacher, I feel a heavy responsibility to show them a better ideal in life. What would teachers in the U.S. tell their students if asked such a question? Why should the student study?
There's a bumper sticker. Americans love bumper stickers. You know what a bumper sticker is? It's a sticker that's put on an automobile, and it has some slogan or political support or whatever. I think Americans and Canadians, I think, are the only countries that do this. And one bumper sticker says, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. In other words, Korea, the United States, Canada, we're always saying, it's so expensive to train people. It's much more expensive not to train people. A liberal arts education will tell you a lot about, you just understand the world better with a liberal arts education. But I'll tell you something else. The fastest way to lift yourself out of poverty is to become educated, and Koreans know this very well. Compare Korea 60 years ago to compare Korea today. Education. And the value is not simply moral and ethical, it's practical. The alternative to not studying is to waste your life.
And the final question, I have heard that there is a royal road to learning. What is that royal road to learning at Yale University?
Well, I haven't heard there's a royal road to learning. This is new to me. You know what? But I'll pretend there is. I'll pretend there's a royal road to learning. And it's not going to be the same for all of you. For the 5,400 students we have at Yale, no two take exactly the same courses. Okay, there's a little difference. And what you've done is you've tried to figure out both what your depth and your breadth as a human being are. And that's our goal as teachers, and we hope that that's the goal of the students who come to work with us. So I would call that a very wide royal road.
I think I would like, maybe I could just say a word about the undergraduate experience at Yale University. And I think there are several aspects which are quite different than Korea. But probably the most important, I think, is that there is a distinct culture to undergraduate life, both in terms of, say, the interaction with professors. You're able to sit down with them and have lunch with them, and there's a certain sense that if you're an undergraduate at Yale, you must be serious. And also, I think the university tends to force students to rise to a higher level. So rather than necessarily giving a difficult test, the professor speaks to the undergraduate as if that undergraduate was a PhD, and the student feels this pressure to rise to that academic or intellectual level. But there's also a very strong creative aspect. Professor Treat mentioned about drama. My classmate, my roommate for 3 years at Yale was a man by the name of Jeff Mays, who went on to become a very famous actor. And we have a lot of people who are creative, always not only studying, but taking what they've studied and transforming it into something different, something plastic, something expressive. I think, however, that Kyung University is becoming increasingly diverse and creative, and I have been very impressed at Kyung University at the degree to which the fine arts school and the music school are very, very central. So thank you very much, Professor Treat, and thank you everybody for joining us for this first of a series of lectures with outstanding scholars from around the world.